It's like figuring out how you can put something together and a relationship. I'm a connector. I like meeting people, understanding their business, and then figuring out how we can work together. So formalizing that into like an agreement where it's mutually beneficial is what I really enjoy doing.
Hello, and welcome to Season 3 of The Founder Mindset, brought to you by ATB. I'm your host, Leah Sarich, and I'm delighted to be back for another season of talking to founders about what it's really like to build a company from that first big idea. If you've listened to previous episodes, you know I was a journalist for over 20 years, so I'm more curious about why anyone would ever want to become an entrepreneur. Not so much about the business model, product market fit, and so on. I want to understand why entrepreneurs keep going, why they think they're the ones to solve a massive problem, why they want to make a real impact in the world. And if you're here, I bet you want to know why too. Let's find out. Joining me today in studio is Remi Schmaltz, founder and CEO of Brilliant Harvest, an AI-powered help desk for farm equipment dealers designed to delight their customers from purchase to repair. Remi, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Leah.
I really appreciate the drive in from Banff.
Yeah, no problem. It's a pretty easy one. Always nice to come to the city under nice weather and beautiful sky.
How wonderful. Yes. Well, as we do at the beginning of this podcast all the time, we kind of go back in time. So I am very curious about how you actually became an entrepreneur in the first place. I mean, you grew up on a farm, right?
Yeah, I grew up on a farm just outside of Calgary near Bicyker, so like 40 minutes from the Calgary airport. But farming was actually kind of a side hustle for our family.
Oh, okay.
So at one point, we would have had it maybe a couple thousand acres, which I know for many doesn't sound like a side hustle. And then, maybe up to like 100 head of cattle kind of thing.
Wow.
But also a side hustle. Our main family business was actually in the ag retail space. So providing crop inputs to farmers. So chemical seed fertilizer and agronomic services.
Oh, okay.
And that was started initially by my grandfather.
Okay. So you went from there. Did you work for that company then? Or was it just sort of around you and you kind of got this vibe of what it's like to be in ag business?
Hindsight 2020 is always an interesting thing, right? And thinking back through kind of growing up, I realized that I had like this kind of innate skill set to like talk to people and to do deals.
Oh.
And I think kind of one of my best like memories of that is I think I was like maybe 13 and my dad had bought a snowmobile. It's like one of these big snow years. And we got a snowmobile on the farm and I wanted to trade snowmobiles. And so I had called up this dealership in Calgary and had like worked out a deal with this guy on the phone.
Really?
And
at 13?
Yeah. Well, he didn't know how old I was though, right?
Okay, all right.
So we showed up, my dad and I showed up and, I go find the guy and and he's like, sorry, were you the guy on the phone? And I'm like, yeah. Like, we had this deal and blah, blah, blah. And he was like, oh my God, so, and this is hindsight. I didn't really realize at the time, right? So this is kind of when I think about, entrepreneurial kind of-ness, business side of things. This is kind of where hindsight I've realized that, I've kind of worked through and always kind of done these things, researching things and figuring things out. Even when I went to university, I went to University of Lethbridge, business major in marketing, but I really didn't know what I wanted to do.
Right.
And I came out of university. My dad had been retired for, 5 or more years. And we had interim management in that ag retail business, which was called Dynagra. And, it was clear that it needed a lot of help. It was struggling. And so my brother and I took over management of it and just started like working on projects. And I was like, man, these projects are fun. Like we kind of figure out like there's a problem, whether it be the finance department, we had a whole bunch of receivables. We would find like experts in the field as consultants. So we found like the guy from Farm Credit who had retired and built their program, hired him as a consultant. And then what I would call, maybe it's not a nice way of putting it, is I'd suck their brains of information, right?
Yeah.
And we'd bring that in-house. And this was kind of like, the learning on the fly in the job and just bringing in these experts as we needed them. And really that's how we kind of really got rolling on a lot of business stuff, and it's a great way of doing it because, university and stuff or post-secondary, it's important. I got kids going to post-secondary right now, but it's kind of foundational.
Yeah.
And the stuff that's most relevant today and like what's happening, it has to be applied.
Yeah.
Stuff's moving so fast. So that's really kind of, I guess, where I figured out that I liked business was just solving problems and implementing technology and kind of the process of it.
Okay, but let's just like take a moment there. So you're this 13-year-old kid. Now I've got kids, so I know what a 13-year-old boy looks like. I mean, I can't even imagine you just like rocking into this place going, okay, man, we did this deal. Where did you get that confidence from?
I have no idea. I didn't even know it was like a big thing, to be honest. I was shocked, that he was perplexed by it.
Right.
And so that's why it wasn't like a conscious decision. You just did it. I just did it.
You just wanted a new snowmobile.
That's right. And I had to figure it out, right? And I think that with my parents, they, when you take an initiative like that to figure it out, it's hard to say no. Is Absolutely. What I realized, right? Yeah. I try to tell my kids that. They don't maybe always listen, but I'm like, if you really put energy and effort into something and it makes logical sense and you can justify it and have a conversation about it, it's really hard to say no.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's what I realized and just started doing that.
I love this. Okay, so you've got the family business and it's you and your brother. What is that like, actually, like working with your brother? Because sometimes working with family is awesome and sometimes it's tricky.
Well, I worked with maybe like 11 family members at one point.
Come on.
Yeah. In that business.
That same business?
Yeah. So that business was owned by my dad and then my uncles and their wife, and they all were like in the mix of it.
Whoa, what's that like?
Yeah, it's tricky. It's a short version of it. It's tricky. It's also super rewarding. I mean, the relationship with my brother, I reported to him in Dynagra, and then in our next business, Decisive Farming, which we had spun out at Dynagra, he reported to me. Oh. And so he's my older brother.
Right.
And we've got a very close relationship. We have like a lot of mutual respect. We've had conversations where we're both, yelling red in the face, voice gone. And we're like, okay, let's just hang up.
Yeah.
Come back. And then it's like, all right, what were you trying to say? And you're like, oh yeah, we're saying the same thing. Of course we are.
Of course we are.
And I think that the key piece for me, and whether it be family or co-founder or like, senior leadership in your company,
right?
It's always around like this alignment and having trust that you're trying to get to the same place.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's so key. Mm-hmm. And so even though we would argue, I always knew that he wanted the same outcome as me. Right. And we were headed in the same direction. It's a problem when you're like, I'm trying to, get to green and you're trying to get to red.
Yes.
Like then it's a significant problem. But I knew we were headed in the same direction. It was how we got there.
Right.
That was what we were working out. I'm a pretty like short to the point, candid person, which can get me in trouble sometimes.
Sure.
Especially with family. But, I've always found it like that healthy friction, is so important to figure things out, right? Because you're solving problems in a lot of cases nobody's ever solved.
Right. Especially as an entrepreneur, you're solving problems all the time. And so, yeah, things can get heated. I can see it happening. Do you think that maybe getting some of that practice in with family as you're learning this skill set was helpful or was a hindrance?
All practice and relationships are all different, right? Like, I mean, my dad was still, from a board level involved in that business. He was a great, mentor for me. I mean, no different than when you're a teenager. You're like kind of pushing the boundaries, right? You're bouncing off this and your parents are like, you can't do that, right? And then, you go try to go over here, right? And you kind of hone in eventually, right? As an entrepreneur, you're like, generally nobody's telling you no other than maybe the bank or whatever, right? Like, there's some constraints, but you're trying to figure out these problems and how you come to the solution. There's no real guidelines, right? So you're trying to navigate through that. And I think that process is really important. And so I don't know, the relationship with my brother, like the yelling and, arguments and stuff. And we don't do that. I mean, we don't work together anymore now, but I talked to him on my drive in this morning as an example, right? Like we're pretty close and like, but it's different. It's not how... It's a different relationship to be able to yell at each other like that.
For sure it is.
Not everyone appreciates it.
Yeah. No, I don't think everybody would appreciate that. That's true. But that's great. That's amazing that you guys pulled this off. Okay, so do I have this right now that Brilliant Harvest would now be your third company?
Yeah, I mean, if you include My early stage venture fund would be fourth.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Koan Capital.
We'll talk about that in a minute. You bet. How do you go then from building all of these companies to Brilliant Harvest?
So in the spring of 23, I had kind of stopped being operational. I was out of TELUS. I was helping another startup for a period of time. And so I was just doing some investment, some mentoring, but I didn't really have a day-to-day job.
Maybe we should just clarify that your last company was acquired by TELUS.
That's right.
Yeah.
So in 2019, TELUS acquired Decisive Farming. I spent a couple of years there. Super successful exit. Good for the team and customers and investors. McGraw Capital was our lead investor in that. And, went through a period of kind of giving back, but also learning.
Right.
And wanted to just try to understand like what else was going on, And so it was a really fun period of time. But I'm a doer, and I don't do well sitting idle. That's like the worst thing I can be up to is not doing something. It's tough. I try to do it often, now and then, to stay in touch with myself, but I like to get stuff done. And so in the spring of 23, Mark Blackwell at Builders and I had been spitballing on some stuff, and he had thrown me some ideas for some companies. And I was just volunteering my time, kind of like, oh yeah, I'll dig into this, and ran them to end. Wasn't a fit for my expertise of agriculture, right? And then I was in Idaho on a whitewater paddling trip, father-son trip. I think there was maybe 8 of us, and down a pretty significant river, class 5, South Fork salmon, pretty extensive, something I've been working up to in my paddling career. Oddly enough, it wasn't the big rapids that got me. It was like a small, you let your guard down scenario, right? And I took the main boat that I paddle is a 12-foot cataract.
Oh wow!
So it's like kind of like a pontoon boat, no floor, so it's just open underneath you, below your seat, and it's meant for whitewater. Okay. So my son, he kayaks. So the group was kind of half and half of what we call cats.
Okay.
Short for cataract. Got it. And kayaks. My downstream oar hit a rock in the water and then shot up and smoked me right between the eyes.
Wow.
And I've never had a concussion. And, the funny thing about concussions, hindsight to 2020, is that nobody can diagnose you, right? Like the only person who can diagnose you, especially when you're on a multi-day river trip, is yourself.
Right.
Unless someone knows you really, really, really well, right? And you're acting funny.
Yeah.
And, certainly people in my group were like, hey, are you okay? They're following up with me and stuff. But nobody actually said the word concussion.
Okay.
I was okay generally. I was able to continue. We were kind of through the big stuff. And then the next day, I actually got another concussion.
Another one. Same trip.
Yeah.
What happened?
Well, so then the guard was really let down and we hit the main salmon, which the South Fork flows into, and it's, super hot in Idaho, and this is pretty chill, like class 3 stuff. But we were on a floaty section, and I was joking around. I had one of the other kids wanted to oar my boat, so I'm like, yeah, no problem. And then my son showed up, and I'm like, I jumped on his kayak to like roll him over.
As you do.
And he reflexively swung back with his kayak paddle and chopped me in the side of the head.
Uh-oh.
Then made a series of bad decisions. I mean, I've kayaked a little bit, but, I don't have a roll. I decided to kayak this stretch of water and had one big swim, and then was approaching kind of the biggest rapid in that stretch. And the group was mainly ahead of me. And one of my son's friends, Dane, who's like a phenomenal kayaker, for some reason, he's like 20 feet ahead of me, looks back and he's like, I got you, Remi. And I was like, oh my God, thank God. And, he helped me out. We hit the right line through there and it was all good. But it wasn't literally till we went and had breakfast and ordered food. We all ate, and it was like this old school diner, all pen and paper.
Yeah.
And she comes by and is like, and what did you have? And I'm like, no idea what I just had. And I'm like, I have a concussion.
You just knew right then and there. Yeah.
So then, it was kind of a few weeks of real downtime, no screens, no reading, and just trying to, kind of work through it. And I was just thinking to myself internally, quiet moments
Yes.
of, what am I good at? What do I know? And where's the money? And like, where's the money where's the money related to a problem?
Okay.
I know agriculture, I'm
Yeah.
good at sales. And then a past customer of ours that was a farmer, a guy named Doug Heritage out of Manitoba,
Yeah.
who's actually, frankly, a good friend of mine now. And he was just complaining about how painful it is at dealerships of the service he gets.
Oh.
And, how expensive a lot of these employees are. It's hard to find good people and you're in remote areas. And so you got to pay them a fair bit of money. And, it was a real frustration because, a new John Deere combine is like $1.4 million.
Wow.
And so you unload like a lot of money and then
Major dollars.
not always getting the service you expect or the timeliness of it. Right.
Right.
And so I'm like, there's got to be something here. Right. And so I started digging into that. And that was
while you're recovering from the concussion. Just to be clear.
This was my recovery, my concussion.
Okay.
So this is in July, early July. My birthday is July 7th. It was July 5th when I had the second concussion.
Oh, man.
And by July 15th, I had kind of validated the problem.
Okay, you're supposed to be resting, just to be clear.
Well, I was, no screens, but I was just communicating.
Okay, so you're just talking to people.
Writing down ideas, talking to people.
Okay.
And then...
This is not what people normally do when they're recovering. I'm just saying for the record.
What the doctor told me was I can do as long as it doesn't hurt.
Okay.
So the idea of, concussions being in a dark room for a long period, that's an old school thing, right? So I started playing pickleball, other kind of like low injury sports of like hand-eye coordination.
Okay.
And got back playing tennis too. And then I started working on this and by the end of July had validated it both with like farmers, with, dealer experts, people in the equipment industry.
Yeah.
And then, Mark at Builders was like,
let's do it.
Great. Let's do it. I'll write the first check.
Wow, that's exciting.
So we incorporated August 1st. So we're just coming up on our 2-year anniversary.
Well, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, let's dig into a little bit about what Brilliant Harvest is. So tell me exactly what it is and what you guys do.
So Brilliant Harvest is an AI customer experience platform for equipment dealers. So we build out a dealer branded solution.
Mm-hmm.
It's for their team at the dealership, but also their customers.
Okay.
And so we ingest all of the different manuals. So a dealership will typically be selling 40, maybe up to 100 different brands of equipment.
Really?
That they would sell and support.
Okay.
So you can imagine as an employee there, it's pretty tough to stay up on everything, right?
Oh, for sure.
And then we also connect to their business system. So we get all of the work order history of, the repairs the technicians done and how they solved it, what parts they used, all the customer purchase history and inventory. And then we also process conversational data. So think about like a call center or like a group chat.
Yeah.
You could have like a precision support group that, is sharing best practices on things, right? So we process all that and we build out a dealer's proprietary knowledge base. And so each of our customers is building their own knowledge base that's specific to them. And this is really their asset. The reality in these markets where you have like manufacturer, dealer, and customer is that the manufacturer always is trying to take shortcuts and be as direct as possible. It's just the nature of it. And I view for the dealer to stay relevant, they have to maintain their IP, their knowledge, their know-how in that market. And so we're not about disrupting the ecosystem. We're actually about reinforcing the ecosystem. And we have agreements with manufacturers around use of their materials. And so that, we're all above board on that type of stuff. And then the dealer is our main customer. And then the dealer also provides it to their customer who are often farmers or on the construction side of the world.
Right. So help me understand then what this means for, say, the farmer who's out in the field, harvesting, and all of a sudden something goes wrong.
So 30 to 50% of the inbound questions from a farmer to a dealer are repeat or easily answerable.
Oh.
So could you imagine you spent $1.4 million just on your combine, okay? Plus you've got probably another $4 million worth of equipment.
Sure.
And you have a question on how to use something.
Mm-hmm.
And a combine manual is up to 12,000 pages.
Wow.
Okay, so you're not looking in there.
No.
Right? So you then try to call the person who sold it to or someone else there, but they're busy because everyone's trying to go at the same time during, planting or during harvest, right?
Right.
And so you can't get a hold of them.
Right.
So something that should be really easy to answer and should be really quick you're waiting. And so then maybe you finally get a hold of them and then they call you back and they don't get a hold of you because you're busy.
Right.
Or you finally get a hold of them and they're like, well, I don't know. I got to look it up. So now the employee at the dealership is spending a bunch of time searching for information. And even if you walk in a dealership today and be like, hey, this is what I'm trying to do, that employee has to look often in like 6 different systems to find the answer to the question.
Right.
And so we pull all that together into one spot, enable for the dealer team to find it faster, but also for the customer to self-serve. And the dealer decides how much of that knowledge they want to share with the customer. Because some of it's proprietary to the dealership and some they're fine to, provide directly to their customer.
Wow. That's a huge solve. I can see that being very impactful for that farmer that's out in the field and it's like harvest time. We got to get this done before it rains, say, the next day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, I love this. Amazing. Okay, so how many employees do you even have these days?
So we're a team of 16 full-time.
Mm-hmm.
We got three summer interns,
Awesome.
which is fun. Mainly based in Calgary, two team members in the US.
Okay, that's very exciting. And how much traction do you have? Like, can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely, yeah. So we've got 5 customers today that represent over 200 equipment dealer locations and about over $4 billion in annual sales. And so we've been, super successful in finding dealers that really get what we're doing and relate to the problem.
Yeah.
And so, we have a pretty healthy pipeline of other dealers that want to work with us that we're, figuring out deals. But I'm a bit of a under promise, over deliver kind of person.
Sure.
And so we're kind of now at the stage where we're gradually kind of rolling out in phases. And so really focused on execution with those dealers and making sure that, it's deployed right, it gets right, it's adopted correctly, and that cycle of feedback, which is a lot of fun.
Oh, that's amazing.
The Founder Mindset is brought to you by ATB Financial. In the fast-paced world of tech, your banking needs evolve as quickly as your industry. Whether you're just starting out or aiming to reach new heights, ATB Financial is dedicated to supporting tech companies every step of the way. Partner with ATB Financial for a banking solution that grows with your business.
Okay, but as we all know, in the evolution of a company in the build, there's always something that goes bonkers. So I think I asked you this in our prep call. Is there a story that comes to mind when you're thinking about like this pivotal sort of do or die moment or go or no go moment that you can share?
This being my third operating company, I've been able to minimize a lot of those.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm probably less likely to feel like they're death moments.
Right. Yeah.
You kind of get acclimatized to the environment to some degree.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, I'd say my threshold of risk and, what's a big deal is probably different than most people.
Right.
But early on, we were focused around, figuring out what's the right technology, right?
Mm.
So, AI is a big buzzword. I think everyone's talking about it. Very few are actually doing it well and implementing it in a way that's, profitable and sustainable as an actual business.
Yep.
And so trying to figure out how do we implement AI? And this isn't a linear thing either because AI is moving, right? This isn't what do I do with a 4-cylinder combustion engine that looks like this?
Right.
And it's static.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a rapidly moving object, right? That's super sophisticated, and what it is today won't be what it is tomorrow. And so you're constantly evaluating how you implement it and how you do it right. And so I think for me, the big moment was not over relying on AI.
Oh.
I think that, a really simple example is you can overcomplicate things with AI.
Yeah.
Humans are pretty smart.
Yeah.
Right. And so let's not make things more complicated than they need to be. If someone has a question or if you're in a piece of software, you could just give them a button or 2 buttons for them to pick from and they'll get it right, almost 100% of the time as a human. It could be something complicated for AI to actually figure out the intent of what the human is looking to do. And so it's kind of this line of where does software and really good user interface fit? And where does AI fit in that kind of journey? And I think that's been probably one of our biggest learning curves. It'd be really if we get that wrong, I mean, that's like a massive impact, right? So when I don't think it's like an outright failure to your question or like where we almost died as a company,
Yeah.
but you could end up down a very wrong path that would set you back a long ways by doing that the wrong way.
Right. So help me understand how you came to a point where you could strategically understand the use of AI and not get too freaked out by it. And how did you get to that sort of place of understanding?
Well, I would say that's about the team. And I'm not a software engineer by trade, right? And so my focus is always about how do we apply technology into a practical business environment and have it build a business. Like that's what I'm good at.
Yeah.
So I rely on, the team to be able to like, okay, what's the boundaries, right? And I'm like, can it do this?
Yeah.
In a reliable way? Because we're talking about farm equipment, right? So if you do something and it's not reliable and then someone gets their arm cut off.
Right.
I mean, this is big, heavy equipment,
stakes.
Right? And it's serious, right? So it has to be really, really reliable. And it's not something that you can just be throwing out there to the general consumer in a way where you're going to do a bunch of testing and, somebody, got the wrong whatever.
Yeah.
And the impact doesn't really matter.
Wow.
This is super matters.
High stakes.
High stakes. That's right. And so, we're on the conservative side of making sure that it is highly reliable in what we do deploy to production. And so we've been super lucky. I mean, of our team, 5 of us have worked together in my previous company.
Nice.
So in terms of like communication and history and just understanding how we operate, that's huge, right? There's a lot of trust there. And then, we've been able to bring on like our lead AI developer is Michael Lanham, who's he's written a book. I think it's his 13th book.
Whoa.
And this one's on how to deploy AI agents. And so literally, if you look
at have on hand.
Yeah, right? And we found this guy in Calgary of all places, right?
Wow.
So super cool. And it's been amazing to have him on our team and really him as like a mentor of, everyone else on our team. So we've been able to build up that knowledge. You throw some like summer interns there that got like some amazing hustle and it's great.
You've got a huge grin on your face. I can tell you love this kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, right? Like I like, to create things.
Yeah.
Creating something out of nothing, really, and seeing it build. And I always think about it, the difference between startups and corporations, like large corporations, is it has to be a symbiotic relationship, right? Between the people in the company and the corporation as an entity or the company as an entity, right? And too often, and I'm not saying everyone's like this in large corporations, but it's about their career, it's about their advancement, it's about them, right? And that's how startups fail, right? That's like full stop. That's how they fail. And so, our culture that we really strive for is like, it's like that gut feeling and you walk in the room of the team that's who's around you and are you having fun with them, right? And how do we fail fast and how do we learn from it? Nobody's ever been fired for making a mistake in the businesses I've been involved in. They've been fired when they've made the mistake multiple times.
Right.
So we're not learning from it or they hit it or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And so we're going to make mistakes. We're in territory that no one's ever done. And so if we aren't making mistakes, actually, we aren't trying hard enough.
Yeah.
Is the opposite side of it, right? So, mistakes are expected and we having them occur, but we got to like talk about them openly.
Right. And learn from them and then move forward.
That's right.
Yeah. So exciting. So clearly, though, being an entrepreneur is not a 9-to-5 job, as we've just discussed. How does it actually affect your day-to-day life, like your relationships, the people you interact with, your family?
There's always trade-off, right? In, my last 2, in my previous 2 companies that I had sold, like Dynagra and Decisive, work-life balance was definitely not great. I was, there's a lot of family and self-sacrifice. And including, my wife made a lot of sacrifices of things on her side, right? And so, this time around, I'm definitely trying to be more methodical about it. And so for me, things like I do yoga kind of 3 or 4 times a week. I have that in my routine. Try to have a morning and evening, like brief 10, 15 minute like meditation session. Nothing like super sophisticated,
No.
but just quiet, thought time. And then, just trying to prioritize things with the family. My kids are, they're getting old now, 16, 18, 20.
Wow.
So, you start to realize that opportunities to do things with them is limited. And so, like this year, my son and I, who's at University of Victoria, we did a trip down the Grand Canyon.
Oh, wow.
And so we were 16 days on the river together with, 6 other friends, like father, son, and one wife combo, but like everyone, we have done lots of trips together. So it was just like easy, no drama. And wow, what an amazing experience, and I just look at those opportunities as becoming more and more limited the older your kids get because priorities change, right? So I'm really trying to be conscious of that. My biggest learning was back in 2017. I would say I fully burnt out.
Oh.
So we had raised in Decisive Farming, raised around $6 million and with Koan Capital. And in the fall of 2016, and then I was on a pretty bad trajectory at that point. But I remember it was like July of 2017. My brother Tash was like, "You got to get out of here." I'm like, "Oh, why? What's going on?" He's like, "Man, you're burnt out." And he's like, "Take 2 weeks off and disappear for a while." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And so I didn't even know the hole that I had dug. You don't realize that every time that, you push things harder and harder, right? You think, "Oh, I'm accelerating," right?
Right.
Moving things faster. But this is like technology debt. It's the same thing. You have, physical and mental human debt that you're accumulating there, right? And if you don't address it, it's going to catch up with you at some point. I get maybe Elon Musk thinks that he can do it forever and who knows what else is motivating him, right? But like normal human beings, there's a deficit that occurs there, right?
For sure.
And if you don't take care of it and take care of yourself, the organism symbiotic relationship dies, right? Like you're one piece of it, right? So you got to take care of the company, but if you don't take care of yourself, I mean, it'll fail at some point.
Sounds like though that you had, your brother in this case say, "Dude, like you got to address this," which is really great. You must be sort of thankful that he raised this flag for you saying, "Hey, pay attention."
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I mean, and I think it was, it's part of like growing up and maturing and like working smart, not hard necessarily. Right. But yeah, no, it was huge. But to be honest, it probably took me 2 years to like get my energy back.
Really?
And then, by that time I kind of got it back. Then we went through an acquisition process with TELUS.
Right.
And it, sucked the life out of me again because that was like a 10-month process.
Wow.
And then I was really out of commission for a while. And it took a long time to kind of gain that energy and excitement. The energy, excitement you feel from me in this room, right?
Absolutely.
Like that energy.
Yeah.
It, when you lose that, it's not as much fun.
No, it's definitely not. But to your point, as you get a little bit more mature, this is not your first time around anymore. You're more aware of that. And perhaps I'm misinterpreting this, but what I'm seeing you do is be very protective and methodical about the things that you need to do to stay well.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good for you.
There's always a reason to sacrifice it.
Of course.
But you're not actually getting as far ahead that you think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we've talked about some of the challenges, but I'm also really curious about what is it that you truly love about being an entrepreneur?
I'm a deal junkie, ultimately, right?
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is it's like figuring out how you can put something together and a relationship. I'm a connector. I like meeting people, understanding their business, and then figuring out how we can work together. So formalizing that into like an agreement where it's mutually beneficial is what I really enjoy doing. It's like creating other symbiotic relationships, right? Obviously, ideally with financial benefit, but not always. Sometimes it's just good alignment, right? So I have a lot of fun doing that, and I think alongside that, it's working with the team, working with good people. I always say, like life's too short to work with assholes kind of
Totally.
thing, right? And,
yeah.
And I have fired people quickly at times when, not for making mistakes, but because it was clear that they didn't fit culturally with their team. And I'm always surprised after I do let someone go, which is never easy. I don't want to sound cold, right?
Of course.
But I don't take hiring or firing like lightly. But when it's clear they're not a fit, I'm always surprised how, the rest of the team comes back and is like, thank you for doing that.
Right.
Where you realize that the impact that's occurring on other people is huge, right?
Absolutely.
And if you don't do that, you're actually
it can
ripping
spread
your company apart in ways, right?
Absolutely.
So I don't love that part of the business.
No, of course, that's hard.
That part's hard, but yeah, like the creation and excitement of things, definitely is a lot of fun.
And clearly you love it a lot because you like mentoring entrepreneurs. You work with CDL, Creative Destruction Labs.
So I've done mentorship with Creative Destruction Labs and Thrive. A few other organizations been involved in, and am focused a little more narrow now.
Mm-hmm.
I've kind of got between kind of existing portfolio and Koan Capital, and then and some other just personal relationships where I'm supporting people.
Yeah.
So less bandwidth on that side right now.
Sure.
You can learn a lot, right? Like even as a seasoned entrepreneur, there's just so much to learn from other seasoned entrepreneurs or up and coming ones, right? How they view things, how they're tackling problems, right? Even if they're not in the same market, right? So there's so much to learn in that journey. And that's part of what I love too, is just seeing other people be successful, right? As well. And them figuring out their problems and being an enabler in that and connecting like people that, can build those synergies.
Absolutely. I mean, that leads us nicely to the investment side, right? Mm-hmm. So you're also an investor. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I started Koan Capital in, I guess it would have been 22. And really just out of, I was doing some angel investing and I had other investors who wanted to invest alongside me. And so ended up formalizing that and in 7 weeks built, I don't know if there's other rolling funds in Canada, but they're more common in the US, but built this rolling fund structure so we can take in
7 weeks.
In 7 weeks and raise the capital. So it's about a $5 million fund.
Wow.
No institutional capital, family offices, high net worth individuals.
Yeah.
I'm the sole GP. I've got a CFO that supports me. But so we've invested in about 16 deals.
Wow.
Primarily in Canada, some in the US, all in AgTech, maybe a little bit into food tech. And really just early stage, right? So sometimes the first check, we'll re-up into, other rounds. We just had a company that probably see in the next week that's, raised $40 million.
Wow.
That we were an early investor in. And so, it's exciting. I mean, they're not all wins. We've also got some failures along those paths, right?
Yep.
But that's, par for the course. But it's a great way to get further involved. It's like mentorship is, one level. And then if you invest some money, you're in even further, right?
You're invested. Yeah.
And so trying to stay engaged with those companies and those entrepreneurs in their journey, because one of the most valuable things I had in Decisive Farming was our independent board member. And, that, and I didn't even know, it wasn't even a methodical thing, but most valuable person for me, because as an entrepreneur, as the CEO, it's lonely at the top.
Sure.
Like you have a board, but almost all these boards are made up of investors, right? Mm-hmm. So you can kind of have candid conversations, but you aren't necessarily telling them your deepest, darkest secrets and fears of, what's going on for you as a person.
Right.
And so having an independent board member that, is a been there, done there entrepreneur, that has been run the gauntlet, can relate to what's happening and just gets it because they're like, how's it going, man? Yeah. And you get when someone asks you that's been there and done that, and they ask, how's it going? You can relate to what it's about. Yeah. It's like, how are you doing?
Yes.
Are you doing okay with this, right? And because it's hard to have those discussions. You want to take the luggage home to your family. Right? Because that's typically stressful.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard to find a place to go with it.
Yeah.
So I highly recommend that. The individual for me was a guy named Carl Stillner from Seattle, not even in agriculture.
Wow.
And so he's the independent on my board again at Brilliant Harvest.
Keep him close.
Yeah.
How important was that to you to have that person just say, hey, man, how are you doing? like you?
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge. Because I think it's realization that, I mean, too often the board conversations or investor conversations, I mean, it's about the business, it's about how that's all going, how's the team going, and often it's not about like the person at the top who's, trying to make it all happen, right? And so I think just connecting on a human level is huge. There's a really, really good write-up. It's a couple of years old now, but Sean Abbott from Inovia, who's written about, building effective boards. Super relevant. Any entrepreneur, I just highly recommend you read that and put the principles to practice. I say it all the time, and even I say it to companies, and nobody really gets it until they hire an independent board member, and they're like, "Oh, I get what you're saying. I should have done this a year ago." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
I was telling you, but you weren't listening." Right? So, people have to work it out themselves. But
what's the big takeaway from that article that you want people to understand?
In particular, having an effective board isn't about having a whole bunch of people. It's about keeping it tight, having the right people on the board, being able to call that out, right? Whether it be an investor that wants a board seat, they shouldn't necessarily have the board seat if they aren't adding value. They can be an observer and put the right person in the seat that does add value. And that's something that, Sean talks about. And I, for me too, and it's the timing of this too, of what's needed in the business, but it evolves, right? And so I think just having that conscious conversation about like, okay, this worked when we were a seed stage company, and, Joe and Pete were doing a great job, but we're now at this phase and we got to refresh this. And, just because you're an investor, yeah, we'll have you an observer. We can help agree on who should be at the table, but like, let's have the right people. That's what's going to drive success, because most investors haven't been operators in businesses.
Right.
And their ability to help is limited. And so I think it's like the right people in the room is so important. It's easy to say and hard to do though. Trust me, because most investors are like, I want a board seat.
I want there.
So
Fair enough. Fair enough. What's really important to us at Thin Air, and I think this might be very important to you as well, is impact. I'd love to know how you think about creating positive impact in the world, whether it's personally or through your companies or your investing or your mentorship. How do you think about impact?
So, I mean, I'm not a political person, and I don't do maybe that well with like what would be like typical volunteering, like for the Red Cross or for like, that's not really my thing either. And so, for me, it's like, how do you give back? And I think that, the world becomes a better place when we have more entrepreneurs creating and solving problems, like creating solutions to solve real problems, right? So, entrepreneurs that have actually really identified a problem and have figured out a way to solve it. I mean, those are things that excite me. And not only that, they have an impact, right? And they create, if you think in, there's lots of good examples where small startups have become bigger, they get acquired, and then all of a sudden you've got someone's a large corporate head office in that city, and then there's spin-outs, right? So it's like there's people who worked in that startup that left the big corporate, because that happens. But then they went and started another company, and 10 companies got spun up out of one company.
Yeah.
And those are like ecosystem builders, right? And facilitation of that is something that I'm passionate about. Try to support and do, the best I can, and with as much bandwidth as I can. But yeah, to me, I think that's how we can impact. I mean, I'm also a big advocate of rivers in general, and like protecting our waterways, and like, especially, salmon bearing rivers.
Right.
And so, try to support those types of organizations as well, because I spend a lot of my time personally and my family's time on rivers, and know how beautiful and amazing they are, and the impact that they have in our world, just, environmentally.
Yeah.
So those would probably be the two main things.
Cool. As we wrap up this conversation, I ask everybody the same question. You are the founder of Brilliant Harvest. You're writing the story for this company. How do you hope it goes?
I think I've spent, quite a few years looking at and figuring out what is a truly massively scalable business in ag tech. And there actually aren't that many.
Okay.
It's actually really hard to do because agriculture has just often is rooted with, an asset or physically the ground in some way or whatever. So it's actually really hard to have like a pure software, pure tech in agriculture and make it highly scalable. And so, the opportunity that we have in front of Brilliant Harvest is huge. And so I want to build a big business and I think that opportunity is here to have really one of the actual first, billion-dollar ag tech companies in the market and have it in Canada. Along the way, I mean, we'll see where it goes, but it's aligning objectives of like, how do you make sure you take care of the team, customers, investors, and have those alignment, right? And so, but yeah, that's the outcome I'm working on.
I love it. And then as a founder, how do you hope your own personal story goes?
For me, family is important and adventure is important. So lots of family adventures.
Sounds like fun. No more concussions, though.
I'm trying my best. Yeah. So far, so good.
Remi, thank you for this conversation.
Yeah, lots of fun. Thanks, Leah.
If you're building a tech company in Canada, you've probably heard of Artemis. They're the recruiters founders trust to find the leaders and key teammates who'll shape the future of their business. I know them personally. They're thoughtful, genuinely caring, and deeply connected in tech. The Artemis Canada team treats every search like the future depends on it, because it does. Ready to accelerate innovation? The Opportunity Calgary Investment Fund is driving our economy forward by investing in opportunities that build a diversified and resilient future. Discover how OSIF is shaping Calgary's tomorrow at opportunitycalgary.com. API is helping innovators accelerate from idea to impact. Whether it's pharmaceuticals, medical devices and diagnostics, health technologies, or natural health products, API supports the full journey, from early research to clinical and commercial manufacturing. API bridges the gap between academia and industry right here in Canada.